Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you're signing in from. Thank you so much for registering for the ManageEngine webinar and most importantly, taking time off your busy day and joining me for today's session. I'm Megha and I'm a product marketer from ManageEngine. I hope all of you are doing well and staying safe. Today's topic is going to be on how you can establish a flexible IAM program, at the same time make it convenient for the employees as well as the IT administrators alike, but also how you can establish a middle ground between the ease of use and also not compromising on the security of your network. So this topic was chosen because because of the impact of the pandemic, we felt a great deal of change. We had to navigate. Some organizations were fortunately uh, managed it better than the others, and years of digital transformation efforts were completed within a span of weeks, with the cloud applications quickly onboarded and cloud platforms being stood up to ensure continuity of goods and services to the consumers. Now we are halfway into 2021 and looking beyond, everybody, all the businesses are asking, what is the future of the remote work? And it looks like in the future, companies will have a hybrid mix of employees working from home partially and some full time remote. Now, according to the Gartner survey, I have this particular survey result. Nearly two-thirds of the companies will provide the employees the flexibility to work remotely. So, as employees gradually begin returning to office or to continue work remotely, we need to realize how this trend might change the identity and access management. Now, with the shift to the remote work last year, we saw majority of the employees logging in from one remote location, and that is mostly the home network. And for most part, logging in from one location, either whether it's the home or it's the office network, gives your IAM policy a straightforward use case to validate your access. But as activities open up and with more remote and partially remote, the hybrid setup, the number of locations and use cases for access will multiply. Now, with the ability to work from anywhere and anytime, employees will start working from several locations besides their homes. Could be a cafe, could be a library. And when the travel resumes, employees will begin logging in from outside of their normal working hours as well, right? With the number of locations that they log in from and the number of personal devices, this combination makes for a complex equation in verifying everyone's identity. Now and in the future, it's critical to verify and centrally manage your identities across your locations and also grant the right set of privileges that these users need, but not to give them what they do not need as well. Right? So this is why we have picked the topic for today's session because of the current scenario. Now, just like any other sessions, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me using the Q&A or the chat option on your Zoom panel. And for some reason, if you're not able to stay with us till the end, please do look out or keep an eye out for an email. You'll be receiving a recording of this session to your email address as well. So a couple of days to process this video and we will be sending them to you. And we've I've signed in from my home network. So if there are any technical issues, meaning you're not able to see me, see my screen, or you're not able to hear me, please let me know using the chat option as well. And I'll do whatever that I can from my end to make sure this session goes as seamlessly as possible. Right, so this is the agenda for today's session. I have listed the topics which, again, the topic itself is quite broad. There is a lot of aspects that need to be covered, but I'm going to be narrowing down and picking just 5 best practices, if you may, and which is something which we can start off with as a part of our current IAM policy and then build upon that going forward. So the first topic or the first point that I would like to cover about is your onboarding and offboarding of employees. Now, we might have had an onboarding freeze in the last year. The hiring might have been put on hold given the circumstances, but with things opening up, looks like most of the organizations are starting to get back on track to their previous activities, and that includes onboarding as well. And offboarding is something that we've been seeing quite a bit as well, with the options to work remotely. There's a considerable attrition that is happening in a lot of organizations. Now, with this comes a set of challenges for the IT department, which is, again, things are not going to be as simple as it's going to be. You're not going to be working from one location. All of us are not going to be from one location. You're going to have users being onboarded virtually, similarly for your deprovisioning as well. Now, in an ideal circumstance or in a normal scenario, the IT administrator usually receives an email from the HR stating that these are a set of users who are going to join the organization on a certain day. And the details are usually sent to you via email. And you're tasked with provisioning accounts for all these employees, right? So, and while when I'm talking about provisioning, it's not just creating an account in AD, it doesn't end with that. Giving the right set of privileges that they need to carry out their task so they are productive from day one. Besides that, you have to take into account all the other business applications that need to be provisioned, or the accounts need to be provisioned for these employees, like your Microsoft 365 provisioning a mailbox in Exchange, MS Teams, and similar such collaboration platforms. And all of these need to be done immediately so that the employees get access right away, and they're productive from the word get-go, right? So if the HR, if you're lucky enough to have a very quick response to these things, for example, if the HR is going to send you the details well in advance with the list of users who are going to join the organization, and you are given enough time to create these accounts before these employees join the team, then that's perfect. But if, let's say, if the employees are set to join on a Monday and you receive the details on Friday, that means it's additional burden for you to address all of these immediately and make sure that they have the right accesses that they need to perform their role, right? So what we can do to sort of bring this process a lot more, make this process a lot more streamlined, to make it a lot more quicker, is to automate these tasks, like your onboarding, your offboarding, as well as your reprovisioning. Now, when I say on automation of these tasks, we can in fact take it a step further and integrate with your IAM solution with the HRMS application. If the solution that you're using, whether it's a ManageEngine solution or any other third-party solution that supports integration with the HR application, it's going to make it's going to help you avoid that dependency on an external team, and in this case, the HR team. Now, when the HR is going to enter, as and when he enters the details in the portal, right, the new user details, the configuration will, or the tool will detect those new user information and create accounts in AD and all those other applications instantly, right? So there's one thing, the dependency on the team is removed in this case. Secondly, the chances of entering or giving data entry errors that could happen when the provisioning is carried out for a number of accounts, there are chances of manual entry errors that could creep in, and that can be avoided when it's just a one-step process. And also, you'll be saving a lot of time because you're sort of cutting down one redundant task, which will be taken care of in the initial stage. Similarly, when the employees exit the organization, as and when the HR is removing the details from their database, HR database, then, or disabling their account, those details or that particular update will also be synced in Active Directory, where the account will be deprovisioned. And also, not just talking, and I'm not just specifically talking about deleting or disabling the Active Directory account, because that would be not the best way to approach your deprovisioning. instead taking care of their inactive account, the licenses that are linked to that, the account, the other accounts, for example, your M365 or MS Teams mailbox, of Exchange mailbox, all of that are linked to this particular account will also be removed. And along with that, the account will be deprovisioned in Active Directory, right? So that way, when you cut down or when you reduce the risk by identifying all your stale accounts, and when I say stale accounts, it's not just your users, but also your groups that are empty, that are not do not have any members, or empty OUs, or even inactive computers. All of them can be addressed in, or can do a periodic check of all these stale accounts and then do a cleanup. So even if you're logging in from multiple, even if your employees are logging in from multiple devices and locations, you can try to cut down on the possibilities or potential malicious activities that could go on by taking care of all your stale accounts, right? So these are some ways in which you can simplify your onboarding and offboarding by automating these actions, and at the same time integrating with the HRMS applications, which will uh, reduce the errors and also make it very consistent, because you're going to have a checklist of permissions that will be preloaded and that can be carried out for any number of users, right? Could be 10 users, could be 20 or more, right? So that is one way to approach your onboarding and offboarding. Now, with the current scenario, there are really it's not possible for us to be logging in exactly during the business hours. Some of us might be working beyond our usual hours. Some of us might be working on weekends, because we have the option to be flexible right now. So, which means that users really cannot stick to the 9 to 5 working hours, or whatever the organization's time that you might be following, right? Which means their logon activities, their logon hours, the permitted logon hours must also be altered accordingly, wherein you take into account all these factors of the flexible working time. Again, doing this for 1 or 2 users is not that big of a deal, but if you're going to manage the logon hours, permitted logon hours for a number of users in your location, in your particular geographical location, then it's going to be quite a task, right? So if you have a solution which is going to give you a ready-made management capability wherein you can update these changes in bulk, then that's one way to address this. Or you can run a script to manage the user's logon activities in bulk. And similarly, the password reset or account unlock, all of these request those typical day-to-day administrative tasks that comes your way. All of these needs to be addressed immediately as well. And they might not necessarily be during those normal business hours, right? So they could come in any time that the employee is working in. And again, as an IT administrator, you have no other choice but to address them right away, because it's these requests, even though they seem to be quite simple, they have to be addressed right away, right? So one way to again stay on top of these changes or requests is to configure real-time alerts. Could be email, SMS, or both. So you know what is happening. You know if a request is sent from an employee, you can immediately address that right away. So the employees do not face any trouble logging into their devices and so on, right? So addressing or managing them in bulk, rather than approaching them one by one, is another way to cut down on the number of help desk requests that comes your way. And even if you suspect that a particular location is undergoing a brute force attack and you want to enforce a change for all the password change for all the employees in one go, then changing the password for all these users and then enabling that the user must change password at the next logon is another way to make sure that these employees' credentials aren't compromised. Right. So as I was saying, again, as an IT administrator or as a member of an IT security team, it is not easy managing the requests from employees for all your for a particular region. If you're managing multiple locations, it's not an easy task, right? So some of these tasks can be delegated, right? But the built-in delegation control wizard in the native solution isn't exactly the most convenient tool to use. Either you might have given to the entire help desk a certain privilege, could be for a password reset or anything like that, and then you might have not gone and delegated a very specific or a granular delegation, because the process itself is manual, and once you've delegated it, it's not easy to keep track of all the permissions, what these users did, and so on. So if the solution, or if any solution, is allowing you to define very specific privileges. For example, you could delegate the HR to take care of the user onboarding. And when I say take care of the user onboarding, doesn't necessarily have to be all the other properties, configurations for the employees, but maybe the initial stages wherein the HR can enter the first name, the last name, the employee address, employee ID, contact details, and so on. And that can be the first stage. And then moving forward, you can update the rest of the information, configure their accounts in other platforms, and then initiate the user creation, right? Similarly, you can delegate certain basic tasks from the employees to maybe their managers. So again, the requests don't get sent to you, all of them don't pile up. Instead, some of these managers who you feel can be delegated certain tasks can be assigned, right? So that's one way to reduce the number of tickets that come your way. And also, again, when you do have a lot of these changes or a lot of these tickets that needs to be addressed, that could, for going through all of them, and then there could be delay in addressing each of them. Rather, you can just have the employees manager address some of these, like access to certain assets within the organization, for maybe the employee needs it for a particular project, then that can be delegated without worrying too much about it. Now, again, delegating it is one step, which is making sure that the employees have the right set of privileges. But beyond that, we also need to keep track of the changes that these technicians, these managers, or HR employees are doing, right? So you have given them privileges. What are they doing? When did they execute a particular action? Was it a success or a failure? So it's always good to have that audit data, which will show you what was done. And this will also help you to keep identify any unauthorized changes, and also help you with the audits. Similarly, the permissions of the users and groups, the possibility of them, or the chances that these privileges get accumulated over time, is very high. For example, when they are onboarded, they are given a certain set of resources, which is specific to their designation or their team that they are part of. But of course, with their projects, or maybe a lateral move to a different department or a promotion, they will need access to more and more resources, which means what initially they would have had certain set of resources, but over a period of time they have more. And sometimes these resources that they were granted initially is not really relevant to them. For example, if there is a department change, if they're moving from one function to another, they really don't need access to the previous assets which they needed to carry out their role. And most of the time, we just address these requests without looking into or taking stock of all their existing set of privileges. What they had, do they really need it? And taking inventory, doing an inventory of all of this is really important, so that there are no chances of users having over privilege or privilege creep. So, one way to keep, or one of the ways in which you can address this, is to review the group memberships of the users. Now, a regular user could be part of a top level security group purely because of the nested group membership property. So, once you take stock, or you get do a periodic check or an audit of all the group privileges, as in which groups these employees are part of, these groups are in turn part of. Then you can do a cleanup to make sure that these users belong to the groups that they need and nothing beyond that. And similarly, the critical file servers within your network, again, their privileges need to be monitored to ensure that they do not have anything, they do not have access to anything that is sensitive and that's not necessary for their job description, right? So another way to also control the privilege accumulation of privileges or any unauthorized changes that has happened over a period that you were not able to oversee is to have the backups of all the changes that were done, right? So there will be a documentation of everything that transpired over a period. And if you want to restore or revert to certain version, then these backups will come in handy. And in case of any accidental deletions that could have happened or changes that are not valid, then you can always use these backups and restore to the version that you see fit, right? So that way you will have a record of everything that happened over a period. And it's always good to keep know what was done, when was it done, and who executed it, and so on. And if there are any red flags, you can immediately flag that and address it. Right. So users, again, when they need access to certain assets within the organization, it's always best to make the users or ask the users to request for them. Now you give them a channel wherein they can raise a request for maybe access to a group or access to any file server in the network. And then when the request is raised, usually rather than sending it to, or rather than forwarding the request directly to the help desk or the IT administrator, in fact, you can introduce few checkpoints or validation checkpoints wherein maybe the employee's manager can be triggered or be notified of this request, and then he can review it. And if it looks good, he can approve it and pass it on to the person, the IT administrator, who would give the privileges. Or if it looks odd, if it doesn't, if the request is of suspicious nature, then it can be rejected. So that way, the employees will not have access to anything that they do not need. And also, there will be a record of all the changes, or who raised the request, who approved the request, who actually gave the privilege. Everything will be documented when you have a checkpoint or a validation for all these changes that happens within the network, right? So again, you could use this step in case if you're not, earlier we spoke a bit about delegation, and if you're not comfortable with the delegating certain access rights to employees themselves, instead you want the employees to raise a request, could be even an HR who is initiating a user creation. He can enter all those details in a form, a template, and then he can raise a request to the IT administrator to complete or execute the user creation, right? Rather than him creating an account, instead you can, the HR can enter those details, and the details can be forwarded to the IT administrator for execution. So that way, again, you will have a certain level, a good level of control over these changes. And this can be implemented if you're not comfortable with giving away privileges to users to carry out, and also having a record of, or record of who did which particular action and so on will also help you to prepare for your audits. So another point which I mentioned earlier is again to configure real-time alerts whenever possible. If the request that is raised, that has been raised by a user is of suspicious nature, and if the manager of or the IT administrator is receiving a notification in real time, that can be immediately stopped, because you will have, it will be authorized only if the request is valid, right? So that's another way to keep track of all the changes that could happen in your network. Especially this will come in handy since we are all working from different locations at this point. and having making sure that you have an audit trail of all the changes, and having and supplementing to that these real-time alerts will of course come in handy. Right, so these are some of the points that we could start off with if you haven't done it already. But again, the topic of IAM is in fact a very broad topic. The reason I picked out these few points is because going to be giving a brief introduction to one of the solutions in the Manage Engine suite, that is the ADManager Plus. Now, ADManager Plus does talk about, or does will help you address all of these points that I listed, which is why I did pick up some of them. But again, the tool does a lot more, and the capabilities are more comprehensive than I mentioned. But again, I've just listed a few of these points here. So let me try to put all of this together with the help of a quick demo. Now, I was talking initially about automating your onboarding and offboarding. Now, the tool supports integration with HRMS applications like Workday, Bamboo HR, UltiPro, and Zoho People, and also supports integration with databases like MS SQL and Oracle. Now, if your organization uses any of these solutions for your HRMS needs, then ADManager Plus can integrate with that particular any of these solutions, and basically the information can be synced. Right? So as and when the HR manager is updating the details, the tool will fetch the new records that are being saved, new employee records that are being saved, and the account will be provisioned for these new employees, not just in AD, but also in Microsoft 365, provision, a mailbox and Exchange, MS Teams, and Google Workspace. So this is how you can automate your onboarding. Now, the offboarding and the reprovisioning works exactly the same way. Now, when the HR has been, when the employee is transferred to a different location, or he's moved to a different team, or if he's promoted, all of these changes will also involve a designation change, the corresponding, the manager attribute has to be automatically updated. So when all of this happens, the HR will update those details in the portal, meaning again, based on these details, you can trigger a certain set of attribute changes as well, like the group memberships, their access to resources, and so on. All of that can be again pre-configured using the policies. Now, these policies can be configured, can be customized based on your requirements, and you can do so for once these policies are configured, you can reuse them anytime the user moves, within the organization in terms of their hierarchy, or could be even a move to a different team or a different department. And the the offboarding also works in a very similar way, right? So when users leave the organization, the HR manager will also update, disable or remove the data from the HRMS portal, and that will be fetched by the ADManager Plus application, and the account will be deprovisioned, along with removing all the entitlements, whatever the account is associated, and then that also can be configured based on your organization's deprovisioning policy before the account is actually disabled or deleted. Now, to keep track of all the permission changes that the user has, for example, your groups that they are part of, their access to the file servers within the network, we do offer extensive reports, out-of-the-box reports, meaning you do not have to write any scripts to get the information. You can generate the report by clicking on the report name. And these reports are quite handy because you can export these reports in multiple formats, for example, your CSV, HTML, PDF, and Excel. And you can, in fact, get these reports, schedule them to be sent to your inbox. So you don't have to log into the application to get any data. In fact, if you want to see a set of reports, information about your active directory objects, just have them scheduled to your inbox or multiple email addresses, and you can get the information in any format that you like. Right. So again, if you want to review their group memberships, just a periodic check or their access to the file servers within the network, you can have them, you can have these reports information sent in the form of reports to your inbox, so you can do a periodic check and then clean them up if necessary. Similarly, your routine actions, like I mentioned about the provisioning as well as your deprovisioning, but also your password reset, your account unlock, your group modification, time-bound access privileges where you can add users to certain groups and then remove them from those groups after a certain point. All of it can be automated, right? So there are pre-built routines that comes with each Active Directory object management. You can configure any of these and set them up on a particular date and time. Now, the point that I was talking about is where you can delegate or allow some of these tasks to be taken care by other users, could be technicians in your team, could be non-admin users like HR or managers within the team. You can delegate actions very securely, meaning if you want a particular HR just to take care of user creation, then you can give only that privilege, right? So he will not have access to anything else but user creation. If you want to give a reset password and account unlock provisions to a technician within your team, right, and maybe an intern to your team, and you want to start him off with just basic actions and nothing more, then you can do so as well. And you can pick and choose which management or reporting that they should have access to. And again, once these privileges are granted to these users, you should, of course, have the option to keep track of or name or get visibility into what these users are doing, what these technicians have been doing. And that's why the delegation also comes with these audit reports, which will give you insight into what actions these technicians did over a period of time. When was it carried out? If an HR created an object, a user account, was it a success or a failure? The details of that user account, everything will be listed, right? So again, just like any other reports, they can be archived, they can be scheduled to be sent to your inbox. So don't have to log into the application, but you'll get every information about your technicians, the activity of your technicians, right on your email address as well. And the final point, which I was talking about again earlier, is if you're not comfortable with delegation, instead you want the users to request for privileges and you grant them privileges. But before you, as an IT administrator, give them the privileges that they need or whatever request it may be, you can create a workflow wherein the request gets processed or sent to multiple checkpoints. And these checkpoints could be managers, could be department heads. And then you can choose who can review it, who has the permission to execute it, and so on. So all of this can be done based on the nature of the task. You can choose who is going to be who are your set of stakeholders for each activity, and all of this will give you a documented record of every change request that has happened over a period, right? So that's just a very quick introduction to what ADManager Plus can do with respect to the topic for today. But again, the solution has a lot more in depth, and we will be talking in depth about each of these use cases with respect to the capabilities in our workshop series. So you can always sign up for that. But if you're interested to know more about them right away, what I will do is I will in fact launch a poll, which you'll be able to see on your screen. And if you are interested to get in touch, or if you want our technical experts to get in touch with you for a free online demo of the solution, whatever topic that you want, then you can let me know. I'm just going to launch the poll on the screen. Right. So the poll is live. So if you are an existing customer of ADManager Plus, and if you have any questions, you can let us know it in the second question. Similarly, if you're currently evaluating the solution, and if you do want us to get in touch with you to help you with this evaluation, then you can again choose yes in the second option. So I'm able to see the entries live. What I'll do is to our attendees who have selected yes, For the second question, I will be sharing this poll result to my team, and they will be getting in touch with you to discuss your convenient date and time for the demo. So I'm just going to leave the poll on the screen because I'm still getting in entries. Another few seconds, 10-15 seconds, and I'll end this particular poll. Thank you so much. I have received your entries. I'm still getting an entry, so I'll wait for another 10-15 seconds. I hope most of you have filled in, and it looks like all of you have. Thank you. And with that, we have the second poll and the last one, which is your session feedback. So you can let me know what you thought about today's session. I will be sharing my email address as well. So if you have any questions about the session or ADManager Plus, please let me know. You can drop me an email. I will do my best to answer them right away. And if you're already a customer of ADManager Plus, and if you do have any support or technical questions, what I would request is to get in touch with our support team if you're already a customer. To all our other users, please feel free to drop in any questions that you may have about the topic or ADManager Plus. If you're curious about the features that we support, the integrations that we support, you can see my email address on my screen. It is megha.r@zohocorp.com. Please feel free to reach out to me.